Hey girl, hey, and welcome to Haydn Behind the Music Stand. I'm your host, Patty Ryan, and with me is Kelsey Farr, who is the Associate Principal Violist of the South Dakota Symphony Orchestra. She also teaches privately through Schmitt Music in the Twin Cities, and also freelances with various groups including 10th Wave Chamber Music Collective and Stone Arch String Quartet. And we'll be talking about her enjoyment from playing video games. Welcome, Kelsey. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I love your intro. Hey, girl. Hey.
I got
Hey, girl. Hey. Good to be here.
I think when you logged on earlier today, I think you said, hey, girl, hey.
I think so. That's kind of my go-to. Yeah. Hey, girl. Yep.
So I'm just going to share my introduction to you story as my funny story.
Okay.
In a way, because I think it's a little bit funny. So I first met you, Kelsey, when I went to, I think it was the second or third concert of 10th Wave Chamber Music Collective before I was even participating in it.
Yes, at Boom Island.
The old Boom Island, yeah. And, maybe a few months into when I moved to the Twin Cities. And, I was trying to make friends. And so I went to the concert because I was trying to support Ari Isomura, again, past guest on the podcast. This was even before I even knew Ashley, who is your partner. And
so.
Yeah, and I saw you and Ashley play these bar talk duos together.
Yep.
And I thought, during the intermission, maybe I should introduce myself to at least one of them. Kelsey looks like she's a nice person. I'll go up to her and talk to her. So I remember just kind of I just came up to you and I was like, hey, hi, I think you sound great. You're like, oh, thanks. And then, it's just kind of funny from there, putting myself out. I was nervous thinking oh my God, I don't know how she's going to respond to me at all, just out of the blue being like, hey,
No, I loved it. But you know what? I feel that same way with a lot of different people. I'm like, oh, I don't know if they really want to talk to me, especially during intermission. They want to take their breaks and blah, blah, blah. But on the other side of things, I love when people come up to me and introduce themselves and say whatever. And I was especially, I think, impressed talking to you because at that time I didn't know that you played with Artaria.
Right.
And so I think at the time, Ashley probably was like, oh, that's Patty. She's the one in Artaria. She's really good. And I was like, oh, that's Patty. I was expecting you to be older for some reason.
Right.
The fact we're the same age is surprising. But I was like, oh, new friend.
Yeah. So, I guess I chose the right person to approach that day.
I think so.
Yeah. And obviously since then, we hang out all the time. And even throughout the pandemic, we were kind of our survival social buddies because we would just play, again, video games together all the time. So much Stardew, so much Kart, Isn't
it kind of sad though that it took an international pandemic to get us to be closer friends though?
Well, yes. I thought we were pretty close before the pandemic, but I guess we got closer because of the pandemic.
And yeah, closer maybe is not the right word. It was more talking on the phone or via Zoom than we did before.
Well, it's true. Yeah, because I think there's times where we didn't have time to hang out with each other because we were busy doing things like gigs and making money. Yeah, so I think I understand what you're saying. It's a pandemic that made us hang out more and in an unconventional way of hanging out.
It's the silver lining in the whole thing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, fair enough. So this isn't my funny story, but I wanted it to be included as part of my association of you as your personality, which is that you just tickle my funny bone in such a very specific way. And I know I've mentioned it to you in the past where it's I just find you hilarious out of the blue, not necessarily attached to any punchline or anything, but just some of your mannerisms or the way that you say things just really go directly to that funny bone in me. I haven't really found another person that has been so direct like that in my life. It's a very unique.
That's so funny that you say that because I don't want to say I get that often, but I do get that occasionally where people are just they'll say, I'm surprised how funny you are or something. Oh. And it's funny because when you seem to laugh at something that I either say or do, I can almost sense the surprise in the laugh. It's not like a haha, you're funny kind of thing. It's like a what did you just say? Which is so funny to me because I obviously don't quite know, not what I'm saying, but I don't quite know like
Yeah, you don't know what the recipe is
gonna have.
Yeah.
Until I see your reaction from it. And then that usually gives me a sense of like where I hit the line in terms of like okay things to say based on the way Patty reacts.
That's funny. I just very much appreciate that. So thank you for constantly making me laugh.
Well, anytime. I'll keep them coming. Should we segue right into what I have about
Yes,
you?
let's do that.
Again, mine really isn't like a story. It's just kind of what I appreciate about your mannerisms and your demeanor. First thing is the way you pronounce Beethoven with a D instead of a T.
I didn't know that. Oh no.
Every time.
Really?
Beethoven.
Oh, Beethoven.
And that to me is very
Like he's got a
next
toe in the
generation,
middle.
like grandma Beethoven. I don't know. That's how my grandma would say it, I think.
Wow.
And I'm trying to pinpoint.
You just burst a bubble. I did not know that I said Beethoven with a D.
Yeah.
Wow, I have an identity crisis going on right now.
Well, and it's not like, I'm not saying it's wrong or anything. It's just that you're the only person I know who says that. Every time you say that, I get a little internal giggle. Just
You never told me.
Well, yeah, no, it's just usually the context of it. It's not appropriate for me to be like, wait, stop, you just said Beethoven, because probably you were talking about something important and professional that we were working on. Or I don't know, I've never really, you're right, brought it up, I don't think, but.
Yeah, interesting. Wow, I'm really going to have to rewire my brain to pronounce it correctly.
No, don't change it. Don't change it. You should keep it because it's very.
Beethoven, no, Beethoven.
Beethoven,
no,
Beethoven.
baby Beethoven.
I love that. I don't know. It's just so unique. The other thing too is, I think you're more aware of this, your little Grinch walk.
Oh yeah. That has been pointed out often as well. Yeah.
Just kind of your little like sneaky, like
scurry.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny.
So to describe this for my listeners who don't actually see me, and I only pull it out with maybe my closer friends and whatever. I put my hands up and I drop them in front of me like they're kind of paws, and then I kind of scurry with my paws as I don't even know what animal I'm trying to be, but I just kind of scurry away with my paws, especially when I feel, it's appropriate.
So Grinch-like. It's so funny. Well, just like I can imagine the cartoon one from like back in the day, I don't even know how
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, it's just you're a total cartoon Grinch around. I love it.
Yeah.
Which is funny because you're obviously not a Grinch type of person. You're very pleasant and warm and whatever. And so the fact that you kind of go into Grinch mode every now and again is very funny to me.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously that comes from watching a lot of cartoons as a kid. So
yeah, probably.
Yeah. Would you tell us about Lucy?
Sure. Lucy is my tortoiseshell Siamese cat. Lucy's kind of off-white with some speckly gray or apricot kind of flecks throughout. She's kind of like a toasted marshmallow color.
Oh.
Yeah, because she's a Siamese cat. She's very vocal. So no matter what's going through her mind, it's always got to be vocalized. And
she's got some very gorgeous blue eyes too.
Yeah, I should mention the eyes. Yep. That was one of the things that really struck me initially about her was just her eyes. I mean, she put her face right up against the cage and was peeking through with her eyes. And I was like, aren't you the cutest thing ever? And of course she was screaming at me like, I want to go home with you. Hello, aren't I cute? And
yeah, right.
It totally worked. And yeah, just as sweet as the day is long, loves people way more than other cats or other animals. She's such a person kitty,
Yeah, and that's, I should say, like, you guys saved me one summer where I had to last minute ask you guys to take care of Sushi when I was away for Stringwood, which is the summer festival of the Guitar String, my quartet's summer festival. And Sushi was in your guardianship for about 3 weeks and got to meet Lucy. So they interacted, and I think they know each other, but I don't know, maybe they've forgotten them a little bit since then. But
Sushi, what it reminds me of a little bit is like, if you have a distant cousin that you see about once a year or every couple of years, you don't really like them, but you love them because they're your family and you have to, but seeing them is not your preference. So that's those two.
Do any of Kelsey's distant first related cousins
listen
to the podcast?
Sorry, Charles. No, I'm just kidding. There's no one named Charles in my family.
Okay.
But that's kind of what it reminds me of, is like they kind of see each other and they're like, oh, you again.
I guess we're supposed to like each other. Yeah.
I guess
but I think it's funny because Sushi I think she tries to be friends with Lucy, and Lucy's just like that older person that's just like, I'd have no energy for you right now.
Yeah,
so
I know. She's like, I can't even with you. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sushi is like as sweet as the day is long and just wants to be friends and kind of play with Lucy. And Lucy's like, I'm good without that. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're right. I think she maybe is a little older.
Yeah, I think because Sushi's about 3 right now, and then
Lucy's 10.
Yeah, so I think it's a big age difference and energy level difference.
Yeah, it could just be one of those like, oh, child, step away from me, you know?
Yeah. Cat socialization is really interesting and funny at the same time.
I know, it's tough. It's not like a dog or kids or something where you can just be like, now you play together.
Right. Okay. Are you ready for some Spitfire questions?
Sure. Yeah, bring them on.
Okay. Oh God, now I'm going to have a complex. Mozart or Beethoven?
Mozart.
Oh, okay. Shostakovich or Prokofiev?
Shostakovich.
Okay. Netflix or video games?
Video games.
I mean, I guess for it to be your outside interest, it would probably be video games, right?
Most of the time, yeah. I will say that I do enjoy Netflix though too.
Yes.
But I would say video games, yeah.
Basil or cilantro?
Cilantro. That one's easy.
Nice. Yeah. Harry Potter, Star Wars, or Lord of the Rings?
Frankly, none. Okay, so the quick answer is Harry Potter.
Okay.
But I'm not drawn to any of those storylines, to be honest.
Oh, interesting.
I think fantasy doesn't really speak to me all that much. It's not like I rebel against any of them.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't turn any of them on by choice.
Okay.
I appreciate them as art forms, and I appreciate
the pop culture from them or whatever.
Pop culture, yes, and all of that stuff. But would I be okay living without them? Yeah. There's appreciation without
participation
for it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. When you said your answer is Harry Potter, it clicked in my brain that we are both Hufflepuffs because we've taken the Pottermore test. And I wanted to give a shout out to our good friend, Asia Myshak, also previous guest of the podcast. Her podcast is called Pour Me a Mozart. And that's when I discovered that you were a Hufflepuff because I listened to your episode, right? And I was like, oh my God, Kelsey's a Hufflepuff. I shouldn't be ashamed of being a Hufflepuff anymore.
No shame, no shame.
But I was like, Team Hufflepuff, yay. So I guess I'm just plugging Asia's podcast, Pour Me a Mozart. You can find it anywhere you can find ours. And she's a fantastic host. And listen to not just my episode, but also Kelsey's.
Yeah.
While you're at
it. I did Afternoon of
the
Fawn and Beethoven 9, I think, the finale.
Yeah. Both good episodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Symphony or chamber music?
Symphony.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee, 100%.
Favorite practice room?
You know, going way, way back to when I was about 15, I went to Madeline Island Music Camp. So they had, back in the deep woods, these wooden cabin type things, but the whole cabin was essentially just an empty room with no floor, no really finished walls or anything like that. It was just pretty much a big wooden box that you were expected to just go in and kind of practice. And so I remember thinking initially, oh my gosh, how am I going to get any kind of inspiration or whatever from just this empty box? But over time, it's kind of nice to have that just fresh, nothing to look at. So really the only thing you're focused on is what you're producing and what you're thinking about. Mm-hmm. It's easy to get distracted, I think, by what's around you sometimes. But in that situation, I still remember just being really what felt like isolation, but in a good way.
Mm-hmm. And you're in the deep woods. You're like in the middle of the forest.
I did get 9 ticks while I was there. So
oh my, what? 9? Yes. That does not sound like fun.
And not to get too into detail, it was all on one day and I was about to go to the bathroom and I pulled my pants down and they were all right there on my legs.
Oh no, horrors.
Yeah, I know. Nothing crawled up too far, but it was like, my lower legs and feet and whatever. Yeah, 9 of them I pulled off. But I know that was like my one memorable thing about that was the ticks and
the practice room.
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking about favorite practice room. I mean, I will say the practice rooms at Eastman were really, really tiny and didn't make the cut of favorite practice rooms. So
yeah, right. Favorite professor shout out?
George Taylor, my viola professor at Eastman. I learned everything I know from that guy.
Nice. Most inspired musical hero of any genre?
If we're sticking to the classical genre, I'm going to go with Tabea Zimmerman. Have you heard of her? She's a famous violist.
Maybe I have.
If I could sound half as good as Tabea by the time I'm her age or even beyond then, I'm going to be tickled pink.
Tickled pink?
Is that a thing? Is that another thing that I just said that's like, what did you just say? Isn't that a phrase? Tickled pink is definitely a saying.
No, I think you're right. I just was like not expecting it. Sorry.
Oh my God, that's so funny. So a non-classical hero, Chris Martin from Coldplay.
Oh.
One reason because I've liked Coldplay for like my entire young life, but also Chris is awesome about sponsoring different charities, organizations, really giving back to the community, finding your own musical voice. And so I think, he's a good role model in addition to being a good musician.
Yeah. Most transformative performance experience?
So when, let's see, I was in my master's, they held a competition to find a quartet to play at President Obama's inaugural luncheon back in 2012. So me and 3 of my friends went to DC and played at this event. And the whole time just thinking like, where are we? What are we doing? Is this real life?
So wait a second. Wait. So you won the competition and like got to play in the White House.
It was the Capitol building in the, I think they call it the rotunda or something within the Capitol building at the luncheon. So this was right after Obama got inaugurated for the second time. And so then they have like a big lunch party essentially. And so we were up in the balcony kind of surrounding the main event room, just playing background music for about an hour.
That's like your most impressive gig ever.
I think so. Seriously, I haven't done anything even close to that since then. And I think that'll probably be one of the coolest things I ever do. Happened to be like 20 years old at the time.
Did you actually meet any, like the Obamas or President Biden or any?
So we walked down past a few of the people. The one like hand I shook was Chuck Schumer's. Mm-hmm. But in terms of presidents, I don't think I shook anybody's hand, but Jimmy Carter was there and he did like a hello.
Aww.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter and his wife, Bill Clinton and Hillary were there, and they kind of looked at us as we were walking by with our instruments. Because it wasn't mainly to say hi to us. It was just because we all were carrying our instruments up to where we're going to play. And I think probably it was just like, oh, there's the group, there's the string quartet.
Yeah, right.
But no, I didn't ever have any like conversations or shake hands with anybody except Schumer.
What was that experience like? Well, and one of my questions is like, what was that competition / audition like? What were even the requirements? Is it like, how well can you play Eine kleine Nachtmusik?
We were instructed to just learn a movement of a quartet to just play in front of the Ying Quartet is the quartet frequency at Eastman. So I think we just kind of had to slap something together and go play the movement. I think there were probably, like a handful of groups doing it.
And then like the music you played again is some Haydn string quartets or I don't know, just like a whatever selection that you decided. And
some of it was classical, some of it was patriotic. So some like
America the Beautiful or
stuff like that had been arranged for string quartet. Yeah, it wasn't like as maybe classically centered as you'd think.
Okay. And did you like have an intensive background check or anything of all, security and?
Yeah. I mean, even to get in the building. Oh yeah. I mean, we had to like not only open up our cases, but take the instruments out. And then people were handling our instruments.
Really?
One guy did a dry swab of Juan's cello. And just to see if like there was any gunpowder or anything on the instrument itself. Yeah. They do a swab of the instrument.
Wow.
Yeah, of course. Full pat down, everything. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, what was that experience like? I mean, it was unlike anything I've ever done or probably will do, just because I think the whole time it was happening, we were all kind of knowing that not only did we have to like do a good job because we wanted to, but also it was going to be on TV and millions of people were going to be watching. And also like a bunch of past and current presidents and, political figureheads are sitting right down there. So So like, don't you dare play an F sharp there. You know, it's like,
right.
Like I said, we were probably 20 or 21 at the time. So while we all were really, really aware of what we were doing and really grateful, I think even thinking back on it now even feels like distant memory, just because I felt like a kid at that time. You know, there's a picture of me actually like wearing a dress. We're doing our warm up before the rehearsal, and you can see I'm wearing sneakers on the bottom. And I'm like, that is not okay, Kelsey. And we're like, you know, and then like, of course they wore real shoes for their performance, but I'm like, just the fact that someone was able to take a picture of me in my sneakers at this event, like I was like, what the actual heck? But yeah, I mean, we were kids, but it was so fun.
Yeah. Were you nervous, or was it, because I don't know how I would react in that situation.
I don't remember being nervous, if you can believe that. I think the reason I wasn't nervous is because I had come to trust the guys that I was playing with so intimately that I knew that I could trust them to get me through literally anything. So, I mean, to this day, like those three guys are like the best musicians I've played with, not because they were good players. Of course, they're amazing players, but I think just that level of trust that we all had with each other really made it so that, you know, we totally got this. And it wasn't scary. I think we're all really excited and genuinely just like having a blast. It was so fun that I don't think we all had time to get nervous.
Yeah.
But there's pictures of us sitting at like these really cool like desks and stuff, like signing fake documents.
Oh, sure.
And it's just hilarious looking back at some of those pictures and stuff, because it feels like a long time ago, but it was 9 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What a story. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, I mean, my pleasure. It was so fun. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Next piece you'd like to learn?
You know what? I've been thinking about learning either another Hindemith sonata that I haven't done yet, or the Hindemith concerto that I haven't done yet.
Okay, so Hindemith though.
Something Hindemith, I think, is maybe next on the list for me. Or, I mean, there's pieces that I would want to revisit at some point in my life, but as in terms of new piece that I've never touched before, I think that's probably what I should do, just because it's high up in our very small list of viola repertoire that's accepted for this or that.
Okay, you finished the Spitfire questions. How do you feel?
We spit and fired.
Okay, Kelsey, can you walk me through your musical origin story? How did you even discover the viola? When did you decide that that's going to be your destiny in life? And then walk us through your education and all the steps that have brought you to this wonderful place in life.
Okay. So I grew up in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. And my first teacher, Michelle Persian, ran the Eden Prairie String Academy at the time. And so she did kind of a circuit around the elementary schools, trying to recruit kids to be in this Eden Prairie String Academy. And so she went around and played all the different instruments and obviously demonstrated a little bit on each. And when she got around to the viola, she played the Star Wars theme, which is funny because I just said how I don't really care about Star Wars. But as an 8-year-old, I was like, well, that's what I want to play because she's playing Star Wars on it. You can play Star Wars on any instrument. So like, what's the big deal? Yeah. But it must have been that or just the sound of it I fell in love with. So I knew that always was going to be my instrument. I never did the whole like start on violin and then switch to viola thing. It was always just viola that I wanted to do.
Authentic violist.
Authentic. Yeah, pretty authentic because it sounded unique. You know, the violinists come a dime a dozen. And so to get a cool viola sound, I think was what I was always drawn to.
Yeah.
As far as when I decided that it would be my destiny, it happened pretty late, I would say, compared to some kids. I switched private teachers my junior year of high school, pretty late. And I think then was about the time where it was like, oh, you should probably start thinking about like applying for conservatory or whatever college you're going to want to do. So we should probably start doing that. Mm-hmm. And so in those 2 years, I think it was pretty much, oh, okay, so we're going to kick it into high gear and you're really going to do this. So I was probably at least, 15 when that happened. So for school, I went to Eastman School of Music for my undergrad and then 2 additional years for my master's. I have an orchestral studies diploma as part of my master's.
Can you explain that at Eastman? Because I think that's a specific Eastman-y thing to do, right?
It was an add-on. So like my master's degree is viola performance and literature, they call it. And then it's with an orchestral studies diploma. So essentially essentially what I did was an unpaid internship as both a member of the symphony and also working a little bit in the Rochester Philharmonic offices or whatever.
Got it.
So it was pretty much a crash course in just how to play in an orchestra, how to work with the people that are behind the scenes and don't actually play in the orchestra with you, but do all the other stuff behind the scenes. And I mean, that information, that kind of experience was so valuable. And that's what helped me start playing in the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, RPO. Yeah, it really got my foot in the door and was a cool thing to kind of add to the resume. And it was a lot of excerpt practice, which for non-orchestral listeners out there, we practice our orchestral excerpts, which is pretty much just little bits of major works that are representative of your instrument group. So I spent a lot of time with my viola excerpts trying to get those up to snuff so that the goal hopefully is that you can win yourself an audition after that. And so that was a good part of my master's. After I finished my master's, I lived out in Rochester for another 2 or 3 years, just kind of freelancing. I played in the RPO as kind of a part-time member. They call them B contracts. And then I would just freelance around to other parts of upstate New York. You know, New York has a ton of these little tiny regional orchestras, many more than we do here in Minnesota. And so you can make a living pretty much traveling around to all those little suburbs and playing with those little groups. And Rochester is a pretty inexpensive place to live. So you can really make a living with that kind of stuff really easily. So I was doing that for a while. Then, you know, eventually it's kind of like, okay, well, a lot of my friends have moved on to other places. RPO really wasn't treating me as their full-time member. They still were kind of treating me as kind of a student, part-time, whatever. And even though I didn't get, there she is. Yep. Yeah, gonna have to be quiet now. I know.
But now Sushi's meowing.
Talking to each other.
You were saying that they were treating you like a student.
Right. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not seeing a lot of potential for like a long-term career here. And also my friends and family are back in Minnesota. I was like, it's just time. So I drove myself in a U-Haul from Rochester to Minnesota in one day.
What? How did you do that? That's a long way.
You know what drug I was on was just the adrenaline of the freedom of starting something new, which it sounds really cheesy, but just like getting the heck out of there. And almost as I was crossing through the states, I almost remember feeling like something bad was getting farther and farther behind me as I driving, which I know sounds really dramatic. I remember feeling more and more liberated kind of.
Yeah, you're like leaving the cloud of, I get.
Yeah. And to be fair and honest, it's not like I had such a bad life in Rochester that I really needed to escape it. It just, I was feeling like a new beginning. And while I had planned to take the trip in like 2 days and spend the night somewhere and whatever, I was just so pumped to get home that I was like, let's just go through the night. So I lived with my parents then when I got home about a year. And then in 2016, I applied to be a private lesson teacher for Schmitt Music. After they received my application, I got a call from Pete Schmitt, the head of the string department, and also like one of the Schmitts, saying, hey, you know, we like the looks of your resume and whatever. You can be a teacher if you want, but how would you like to manage the string shop here in Woodbury?
Wow.
And so I was like, hey, okay, I don't have a job, no money, I'm living with my parents. Yes, let's do that. So from 2016 all the way through about probably 2018 or whatever, I worked as their string specialist, they called it. So whenever someone had to come in and buy an instrument, or whenever the staff had questions about how to look at a violin or talk knowledgeably about it, I was pretty much that reference person to teach the company how to deal with string instruments. And so that was a really interesting time in my life, just because I learned a ton about stuff that I had never been taught before about how physical instruments work and the differences between them and stuff. As a player, I was never really taught those things, what to look for, what to really feel for, or really just hands-on, or like, oh, you know, this string length is longer here, or this bridge placement, or blah, blah, blah. We string players aren't really taught to really... We
are taught to play the box, and it's our fault if it doesn't sound good or something like that.
So that was really interesting for me, just to get kind of the behind the scenes perspective of how to not only look at an instrument, listen to an instrument, really critically listen to differences in instruments, being able to talk about them, intelligently, and then also be able to sell them to a kid who presumably doesn't know anything about it.
Right.
Sometimes don't even know how to play all that well. I learned a lot just about how to talk about those types of things with people, and it changes the way I teach and it changes the way I listen to myself play too. So that was a really cool learning experience. I don't know if I care to really do that again soon. It took away some of the performance aspects of my career at the time, but it is something that like maybe when I retire or don't play as well later, I would do again, because it was fun. It was pretty interesting. So after that brought me up through about 2018, something like that. Since then, I've just been doing the independent contracting, teaching. But I mean, Schmitt's been a big part of my life now for 5 years, we'll say.
Yeah. And you must have won some audition for South Dakota Symphony.
Yep. So I've been playing with South Dakota probably since 2015. I love that group just because everybody's so warm and so friendly, and they really treat their out-of-towners like family, or like guests, I should say. Whereas some of the other regional groups I played with in the past, it's easy to feel like kind of an outsider. You show up and, they kind of look at you like, oh, well, who's the fresh blood over here? It's trying to put us in our place. But really, that's not what we want to do. We just want to come and make music with everybody.
That's right.
But South Dakota is just so welcoming, so nice, good musicians, really good repertoire that's picked. They choose a lot of good new music that might give audiences something that they've never heard before, or by a type of composer they've never heard before, or they do a good job, I think, of stretching the ears of their audiences, which is really important nowadays, orchestras especially.
Yeah, no kidding. Since the pandemic, you're just able to teach online privately with your students.
Exactly. So for teaching, I think my main goal with them has just been providing them with a person who can be another adult other than their parents that they can interact with throughout this. I think it's been hard for all of us to kind of just be with our own either family members or by ourselves this whole time, and not getting a lot of different people around you. But at least then I can be another face for them to talk at for a little bit.
Right.
I think my expectations have evolved since the pandemic, just in terms of what I can complete in a 30-minute lesson. But I'm hoping that some of those newer ideas that I've had to use online, I can start incorporating back into in-person when I do get there.
Yes, there's definitely hope on the horizon.
For sure. And I think we all can really learn from the last year and kind of take what was working before and make it even better, take what wasn't working before and kind of change it. We'll have kind of a new and improved life after this, I think. At least that's the silver lining I'm choosing to put on it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. The silver lining filter. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Kelsey, are you ready to take a break?
Sure.
Okay, we'll be right back. Welcome back from the break. So can you tell me a little bit about how you really got into video games? Or because for me, if you've ever listened to Aries episode, I never played video games until I moved to Minnesota. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, that's right.
So my first video game system was an N64, Nintendo 64, right around late 90s or something. So I probably was in like 5th or 6th grade when I first got into video games. And so I played all my N64 games throughout my entire youth. And then I got a Nintendo Wii. I should say I've primarily stayed in the Nintendo category side of things. I never got like PlayStation or anything like that. I got a Nintendo Wii then when it came out. And then when the pandemic hit, Ashley and I lucked out. We got the last Switches that were like in the state of Minnesota or just like in existence, period. Because there was such a backlog just of people who wanted Switches. We got one of the last ones and it was the best addition to our lives I think we could have planned for during this because, we just play way too much. And it's really gotten us through this year.
No kidding.
I think while, yes, I was a fan of video games before, the last year pumped it into high gear in a way and just really made our almost appreciation for it skyrocket, just because it was one of the few things we had to do. And it was something that we both liked to do for hours on end. It kept us entertained and kept us connected with friends. You know, I think that was a huge part of it too, is that for those of you listening that don't know that much about video games, games or Nintendo Switch or whatever. Kind of the beauty of it is that you can play online with your friends remotely, I should say. So it really was a good way for us to just kind of stay connected and talk every day without sitting there on the phone like, oh, how was your day? Good. How was your day? We could really kind of interact and be doing something interesting while still maintaining our friendship. And so in some ways, it actually brought us closer together. My relationship with Josh has blossomed a ton. I wasn't very close friends with Josh until the last year.
Shout out to Josh.
Josh is a violist, right? Yeah, just shout out to Josh. He said he was going to listen to this one. So,
nice.
Hey, girl, hey.
Hey, girl, hey.
But yeah, I mean, just the way that Switch and video games and whatever has helped keep us connected during this time has been invaluable. I mean, it would have been so much more boring without it, I think.
Oh my God, you're telling me. So, okay, here's the thing. We had been talking about getting Switches just in general between all of us. And we were egging you guys on to get one for the longest time so that you could do these games and play with us, right?
Yes.
And you're like, oh no, we already have a PlayStation and a Wii, like, you know, it's whatever. There's some reason or another. And then when the pandemic hit, it was like, okay, they're really going to get one now, you know? And so that absolutely opened up our world of connecting and interacting and being social in a way that, has been really, really wonderful. So let's talk about some of these games. And I have to say as well, like I am only as well versed in whatever Nintendo Switch has to offer, which for me has been a really fun discovery because it's a part of my childhood I didn't grow up experiencing because, again, like I didn't have video games. I literally started playing video games when Ari introduced it to me 3 Halloweens ago or something like that.
As an adult, yeah.
So I'm having a blast going through all the Mario worlds and stuff. And there's a lot of the lore that I don't really know, but I'm slowly understanding. There's certain things about nostalgically kind of feeling like I'm finally growing up with my generation. And, you know, all you guys are telling me about all these games I have to get because it's a revamp of this past game that was your favorite from your childhood and, you know, these things. So it's like layers of not just interacting with each other, but there's also this childlike relation to who we are as people too. For me, it's been kind of a fun discovery of all my friends and the little things that meant so much to them as children is now something I get to experience. So
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So what I've been doing these days has been playing Zelda Breath of the Wild for like the 3rd time.
That was the gateway drug for me, was Zelda Breath of the Wild.
And can I just reveal something that people are going to laugh at me over, which is until I played this game, I know Zelda has been around for 40 years plus, you know, now it's kind of a relic as a concept and a story, but this whole time I thought Zelda was Link, or I thought Zelda was a boy.
Oh,
I should phrase that differently. I thought Link was Zelda.
Oh,
because they always show the artwork of, it says Zelda and then there's Link.
Link, right.
And so I always thought that was Zelda. And so then I was like really confused actually when I started the game because I was like, wait, you're telling me that Zelda is that girl, Princess Zelda? Like, wait, what? And then it was like... I just had this epiphany of like, wait a second. Yeah, Princess Zelda is obviously a girl.
Here's the thing though, like I absolutely understand all of that. And for me, I thought Zelda was this weird like Xeno warrior princess thing going, like when I was growing up, I had no idea. Like even when symphonies would tour with Zelda, I was like, why would anyone go listen to a symphony play Zelda music? Like I'm so confused.
Yes.
I think their marketing is very misleading because I was like, who's Link? Everyone talks about Zelda and like you never get to do much with Zelda because she's dead or whatever. I don't know. Like
yes, exactly. It's like Zelda has very little to do with Zelda. That's why I kind of was like, wait a second. Oh, I'm having like a big time like revelation moment way too late in life. Anyway, so that's been my primary game just last few weeks.
Yeah. I mean, and what a wonderful game. Can you tell me what about Zelda Breath of the Wild do you find really great about that game?
Total escapism. Whatever is going on in your real life, you just turn on Zelda and within 5 minutes, you're totally on to something else. You know, it's just, I mean, whether or not this is a healthy way of coping, you know, has yet to be discussed, but it's a good way to just kind of shut your mind off, think about something else and be in literally a different world for as long as you want. Another beauty of the game too, is that it's never ending. You can keep exploring the world forever because I think it's big enough so that you'd really have to play forever to like be really, really comfortable with the map. I know you've been going through it recently without the map.
Yes.
And that's crazy to me because I think about that every time I play and I'm like, would I be able to do this without the map? That's really impressive. But I think that's part of it for me is, I can keep exploring this and keep learning new things about it and keep getting well acquainted with it even after hundreds of hours of playing it.
I absolutely 100% agree with you, especially about the escapism. And then the thing is, there's even escapism within the game, within the map. Like if it's snowing outside, I don't want to go anywhere near any of the snowy parts of the game, right? Like I want to go to that tropical island beach resort, Lucerne. It's not Lucerne, but I always pronounce it Lucerne in my brain because of the music festival. But you know what? Now everyone's going to hate me for not knowing the name of this village.
Oh my God, me too. And now I can't think of anything but Lucerne. Thank you so much. Laurelin Village, right? The beach one.
Yeah, the beach one. Yeah. Like that's where I want to hang out. It's nowhere near any place like there's no village up there. No, is there?
There's like the Hebra Mountains.
Yes, right. But then simultaneously, if it's during the summer, I want to be in the mountains and the snowy parts and stuff. One of my favorite things to do on that game is to fly. I don't know about you, but I love the paraglider. It makes me feel like I can go and do anything,
And I don't know if you have this experience just in your day-to-day life. When I see something either on TV that looks like a vast landscape, or if I'm in person and I see something where it's like a mountain, or say I'm looking down from my balcony even, I live on the 14th floor of a high-rise condo building. Sometimes just in the back of my head, I'm like, how would I get up that mountain over there? Or, I wonder if I have enough stamina to fly down there. And like how is my brain thinking that?
So Zelda was my very first game, right? The gateway drug. The more I played it, my immediate response was very similar, where it was like, I would look at a side of a building and be like, can I climb that? I could jump from there and then hold on and then climb a little bit and then I'll reach the roof and then fly over. Yeah, totally. It was like, I think it's just that my mind never thought in this way. And then video games unlocked this alternate universe where anything is possible.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. 100%. Because even though I physically wouldn't be able to jump from this building to that building. Whatever.
Me neither. And also Link is just like this crazy athletic. No one can just free climb like that.
I know. But I think our brains now have learned how to strategize a little bit more in that way. And that's the type of thinking that American Ninja Warriors do.
Yes.
Too. My cousin does some of that stuff. Or she does the American Ninja Warrior Junior. She's 12.
Oh, wow.
And she'll constantly just being like, I would do that and flip over that and then like grab onto this thing and do that. And it's like awesome, but she can actually do it then with her little 12-year-old skinny body.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think our brains are kind of strategizing different ways now than they used to.
Yeah. So Breath of the Wild is like obviously a highly popular game. If and the thing is, I think for some people, the introduction or getting into the game is a little bit difficult, but then once they start to get used to the controls and whatnot, then it's just like, oh, wow, this is a wonderful game. I think that's what I've heard from a lot of people. Let's transition to another game, though. So I know that you really went down the rabbit hole with Stardew Valley.
Big time.
Yeah.
So Stardew Valley was the first game that I shouldn't say the first game that we got, but the first game that we dove face first into because it was a game that we knew a lot of our friends had and we could play together. So initially, you actually started the Corona Farm.
Yes.
Which is what it sounds like. It's just a farm for all of our friends that was based on the coronavirus. Fun game, I think for the same exact reasons that Zelda is a good game. Total escapism. Everything is happy. Nothing really bad is going to happen to you in this game, especially Stardew. More so than
Zelda. Yeah.
Wild. Yeah. I mean, there aren't any bad guys that you have to fight in.
So that's where I should say, like, let's preface a little bit of the game. So like Stardew is a farming primarily game, but it's way more than just a farming game. There's like, and you've discovered more the game than I have because I cannot fish for my life on that game. And I'm at the mercy of now like asking you and Ashley to fish for me to complete my community center and that sort of thing, or even get down to the depths of the desert and the mines down there. But yeah, there's mining, there's fishing, there's all these quests that you do with the villagers. And, for a game that's $15, $20. There's so much in it. And it just recently had a upgrade to the game too.
Yeah, they updated. It's called Stardew 1.5. And so for that, I don't think this is a spoiler for you because you've probably heard us talking about it, but you can go to an island.
Yes.
Separate from the Stardew Valley or whatever. And so that's been really fun. You know, you were talking about kind of the cheapest game, but with the most amount of stuff to do. That is what struck me the most about the game, is just that, yeah, it appears to be kind of a lame kind of surface level game, but we've both been playing for, hundreds of hours, and it's like there's still stuff we haven't done and still stuff that you haven't done. Every person, I think, can have a drastically different experience too within the game. That it is really personal and subjective, which is kind of cool.
And the fun thing about Stardew that is different than Zelda, because so like Zelda is what's called an RPG for, I feel like a little redundant defining this, but RPG meaning role-playing game. Only you are in control of the game. No one else can participate in the game. Stardew can be an RPG game, but we can, as you say, have something like Corona Farm where you can have your friends join and be side workers for your main farm. And I remember there was one day during the pandemic, the early days of the pandemic, when really no one was doing anything anyway, that I remember it was you, Ashley, I mean, you plus Ashley, right? Asia, Lindsay, our friend Lindsay Bordner, and me. I think we played 5 hours straight together once.
Oh, was it that many? I did not know. Wow.
No, and the thing is, it's like, what else were we doing? I mean, it's like, that's the only one time in our life that we did that, right? But it was like, it was this weird time where we're all building towards something. It was, I mean, for me in the pandemic, that was the best kind of escapism because it made me feel like I was productive despite not being actually productive in my life.
That's a big part of it for me too, subconsciously, is that even if I don't feel like I got all that much done in my real life, at least, oh man, I really made my farm look spectacular today.
Yeah. Or you unlock this new level in this game, and therefore, I mean, that recently happened to me in Hollow Knight. I don't know if you have this game or not, but Hollow Knight is a similar game. It's probably about $15 to $20. It is a jam-packed game where, here's the problem with the game though, it's really hard, but once you unlock something, when you finally beat that boss or whatever, then it's like, oh my God, this entire world. And I'm spending maybe too much time right now playing Hollow Knight, but I am still discovering all this territory that I didn't even know existed. Or like when I think that the map is done, I like turn the corner and there's some whole new map that I need to find, and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a fun game. It's also an RPG, and you're this little knight that's killing all these bugs and stuff. And I don't really know the whole point of the story. That's really not that important, but it's a kind of a combat-y, but also discovery game. And I find it similar to Zelda, but not quite in the same vein, and also much harder than Zelda.
I'd be willing to try it. Yeah, next time we're together, you should bring it over.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I will. So anyway, I didn't mean to go on a Hollow Knight tangent, but yeah, total escapism and like feeling the need to unlock the next level of a game is just so rewarding.
Yes, absolutely. Especially since we probably feel so stagnant here. It's not like we're unlocking levels of our own life.
Right.
So we probably feel like we have to like do something to like keep progressing in life.
I want to preface what you're saying by saying like we are unlocking moments in our life, but life happens on a much slower level than a Stardew Valley day does, right?
True. Yeah, that's true too.
What other games have you really gotten into?
I also I know this is one that you like too. It's called Overcooked. So it's a food cooking game. So you're like this tiny little thing running around a kitchen and chopping stuff and cooking stuff. And I think part of the charm, but also part of the frustration of the game is that all the food items are like disproportionately big compared to the character's body. And so it's just really awkward to like take this huge onion and then move it over here to this cutting board and then chop it 3 times. And then the actual logistics. And
if the map of the restaurant was in real life, the architect should be fired. Like that's
worst restaurant ever. Yeah, like non-functional. There'd be like a river going through the kitchen, or like, oh yeah, how about if we like suspend this floating bridge across at the kitchen? And that sounds good, right?
Right. Or like you're in a hot air balloon and you have to make some pasta and you have to throw it across to the other balloon, or very not realistic or practical kitchens by any means. But Stardew Valley, especially if you play with a bunch of people, is a team teamwork game, but I think that Overcooked is even more of a teamwork game.
For sure. You really do need to have good communication skills.
Oh my gosh, the best.
Patience, Ashley.
Shade. No,
Shade.
no, no.
Oh, I'm going right for it. Yeah. She knows. She'll be the first one to admit it too. But you know what? I think I was going to say I like games like that and games like Mario Kart or something every now and again, just as kind of like a do it for fun with friends kind of a deal. But I'm maybe more attracted to games where, like we were saying, it's more depthy and kind of no matter how long you play it, it's kind of still got something else to offer.
Yes.
Or just even, I feel like if I took a year off from Zelda or Stardew and came back to it again, it would be fresh enough so that it felt like a new game or newish, you know.
Yes.
As opposed to, I feel like Mario Kart or whatever, once you've done those 48 races 100 times, then it's like, okay, I've done them 100 times.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair point, and how to assess certain games to have a longevity to them. It's similar to a piece of music that you can come back to and have fresh eyes with. And it's familiar, but you might discover something different that you didn't the first time because you're just busy trying to learn the notes, right? I think that that's something, at least for me, that I have really enjoyed and discovered is that despite the escapism of video games, there's so much connection back to how I relate with music. At least I'm just speaking for myself here, I suppose.
Yeah.
In a similar way of like what I'm saying, like revisiting an old piece of music and already kind of knowing the territory, but then really finding a new corner around the map or something, or a new way of putting things in perspective, right? Because like, again, like let's say with Zelda, like all you're doing is trying to beat Ganon, but there's so much more to the game than just beating Ganon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's like one even tiny forgettable portion of it in my mind. It's like Ganon is definitely the end game and you beat the game when you beat Ganon or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it takes you like 20 minutes out of all of the like hours and hours and other stuff that you do.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to say too is the first time for me going through Zelda, some of the fights and bosses were just so hard. And I was like, I don't understand, or I guess I really had to practice beating these certain enemies, right? Yeah. And in hindsight now, when I revisit the game, probably the fourth or fifth time, some of those things I'm like, oh, I know exactly how to do that. And that's how I feel similarly to playing the cello sometimes. If I see a double stop, that would have freaked me out when I was in my younger years. But now I'm like, oh, I know exactly how to prepare myself to make sure that that's in tune, right? Like I know how to execute this little mini boss that's on my page or something like that, right?
Yes. It's so funny because I actually use that analogy with my students on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Especially the ones that I know like video games and whatever. And they know that I like video games too. I'll make sure that I reveal that I play video games too, so that they know that I'm a human who also needs to not work all the time also. But yeah, I'll say all the time, you know, like, okay, I bet when you had to beat this boss, you didn't just do it right the first time and then forget about it. No, you had to do it like 6 or 7 times. And then you almost threw your controllers through the window. But
yes.
You kept with it and you did it, and then you beat the game, right?
Right. And then again, you unlock this new level for yourself, musically speaking, right?
Yes. And they always kind of look at me like, you know, whatever. Oh, but it's viola, boring, you know, but it's like, but you can have that level of excitement to your musical evolution. It's just you haven't beat the level yet.
Yeah. So here's, to me, the appeal of that is the discovery and experimentation of playing games too. It's expanding possibilities in your mind, even though on a surface level, it's just playing a video game, but it is stretching the imagination of what is possible sometimes, you know, or how to accomplish the goal you set out to do.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I mean, I think there are so many lessons just in video games about how to develop and reach goals, how to be patient, how to be persistent, all sorts of valuable goals that I think kids don't really know that they're getting.
Learning in the process of playing these games. Yeah,
exactly.
At the same time, though, there are some negatives. Like, I mean, it is a distraction, right? Like sometimes I'm like, well, I should be editing the podcast. And I'm like, no, I want to play this game, right? But I also think that that's something highly applicable to music too, where it's like sometimes you have this thought in your brain, it's like, I should be practicing right now. But sometimes it's better to set aside time for yourself to do the productive activity you want to do. And sometimes having the outlet of doing something different, like playing a video game or whatever. I feel like for a lot of musicians, we have this guilt built up in our brains to practice, because if we're not practicing, someone else's, and then that means they're going to win the job faster than you and a better job than you because you're not improving as fast or whatever, right? So it's taught me to value the time I have with my instrument and when I practice.
Yeah, I mean, this has nothing to do with the video games necessarily, but George Taylor, the guy I referenced before, used to say something that I think of on a daily basis, which is, it's not that that person practiced more than you, it's that they practiced better than you.
Yes.
I'm glad you said that you really value like the quality time of playing cello, not just like the going through the motions of doing your stuff just so that you get the time spent and you can log hours, just so that you actually go in there with a goal in mind that you want to complete. And it's okay if it only takes you half an hour, because you know that you really practiced it efficiently and learned something during that time.
Yes.
But obviously we've spent a lot of time doing the other thing, which was just, oh, well, if you're told that you have to practice 2 hours a day, then like, I guess I'll start the timer and just do my 2 hours.
Right.
But that's almost worse than nothing, in my opinion.
It's funny how your brain tells you when you're ready to do productive work and when it needs to do exploratory, fun work, like playing a video game.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Obviously, I enjoy playing video games with you, Kelsey, and I look forward, even post-pandemic, to continue some of our Corona Farm or Mario Kart, or just introducing each other to new games.
Yes, 100%, I'm in.
Okay. Can I ask you 2 final questions?
Yeah, sure.
What, in your opinion, is the most common misconception of classical music and the classical music world?
That we're stuffy and uppity people. We might play music from primarily dead white guys, but I think we're trying to evolve that and expand that a little bit. And I think it's important to know that classical musicians don't always share the same classical values, we'll say, but just happen to be trained in that type of music. So a lot of classical musicians are more personable than you might think.
Yeah, hence the premise of this podcast, right?
Hence, I was just going to say, hence the reason you're doing this.
Yeah. And my second question, after all the impact that COVID has done to classical music, what do you think is something positive that will enhance and carry on in our profession?
This kind of segues from what I was saying last, is just the more we can start pushing the envelope, keep coming up with new ideas, taking what we've learned from the past and changing it to better suit our needs for future music lovers, so that in 100 more years, when they look back at this time period and consider this to be classical music, what did we take away from this era? What did we have to contribute to 2021 as a music year? How does it reflect culture and what's going on at the time?
Yeah, great. Are there any platforms or websites for listeners to learn more about you or any other upcoming projects?
Probably the South Dakota Symphony website.
The website is sdsymphony.org.
Otherwise, I'm generally a private person. I don't do a whole lot of stuff on social media or websites necessarily, but I would consider myself to be an easy person to talk to or get a hold of. So
apparently, if I was the one to gravitate towards you at that 10th Wave concert and say, hey, that Bartok sounded pretty awesome.
I'm so glad you did, because it started a nice little friendship.
It really did. It really did. All right. And if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, go ahead and press that subscribe button and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. The reviews and ratings help this podcast be more visible to others. And it's a free way to support the podcast. Another free way is to tell your friends and family about it. And you can always become part of the Haydn Behind the Music Stand family by donating to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Haydn Music Stand. Don't forget forget, there is a Spotify playlist available that contains all the pieces we've discussed on the podcast. It's all really great music, and the link is always in the description of each episode. Actually, that's something that I've always been thrown off by since seeing the word Link. I think of now Link as Zelda. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Oh
Do you have that too?
Yeah.
Okay. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Haydn Music Stand for more content. Kelsey, thank you so much for sharing your evening with me and for being on the show today.
My pleasure. It was such a pleasure just chatting with you as usual.
I know.
And let me know if you want to do it again. I'm here.
Absolutely. And thanks for listening. Say bye, Sushi. Wow, cheese is amazing.
I love cheese.
My God.
Maybe that should have been my outside topic.
You could have.